Hey, Collin? Yes, Collin? What is ASMR? What do you mean? I mean, ASMR, what is it? Those videos of people, like, tapping microphones? Yeah. I mean, what is it? Well, it's obviously some kind of performance, right? Sure. And it uses sound as its medium. Yeah. So, is it music? Good question. Hello, my name is Collin McCook. Yesterday I thought I'd develop tinnitus because my neighbor's car alarm went off for 8 hours, and I'm so glad you asked. You see, ASMR is weird. It relaxes some people, confuses others, and makes everyone feel something. But if you stay to the end of this video, I'll show you how ASMR was created in 1952, performed on a mid-century American game show, and absolutely is music. ASMR, or the Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, is a tingling sensation of the scalp, neck, and spine caused by auditory stimuli. However, the science around ASMR is new and highly contentious, with some scientists not even believing that ASMR is a truly unique or even measurable phenomenon. However, what I think a lot of people miss is ASMR is not only a physiological response, but it is also a genre of online content, and no scientist can dispute that fact. Just look around. YouTube alone has tens of millions of ASMR videos. But where did this all begin? All the way back in 2007, internet user OKWhatever51838 coined the term ASMR on a health forum for neurological disorders and diseases. She used this term in reference to this tingling sensation she would get as a kid when she was watching, of all things, puppet shows. The next year, in 2008, the Yahoo group The Society of Sensationalists were formed. Now, I didn't know that Yahoo had groups. Maybe that tells you my age or my internet access. But apparently this was just an internet forum where this online society could describe their sensations. Let me just say I'm glad the term ASMR won out and not sensations. Regardless, these are the first two online references to the feeling of ASMR. But like I said, ASMR isn't just a feeling. It's also a type of online content. So where does the content come in?
Hello. I thought that I'd make some videos of me whispering.
Armed with the microphone of an iPhone 3GS, the YouTube channel WhisperingLife became the first person attempting to intentionally create content to elicit ASMR. This was the birth of the whispering community on YouTube, like Whisper Sister, The Whispering Voice, Whisper Boy, and Mitzi Whispers. In fact, Mitzi Whispers released her latest video as of November 22nd, 2025. She has continued to make ASMR content for 14 years. Now, 14 years is a long time, but ASMR started as this really small whispering niche on YouTube, which begs the question, has ASMR ever really hit the mainstream culture? Well, there's this really fascinating video that I've linked in the description by YouTuber Alex and At least I think that's how you say his name. He only has 8 videos and he stopped making them 5 years ago, so... In his history of ASMR, he finds an article from 2014 with the intention of explaining this whispering culture to a mainstream audience from the Daily Mail Australia. However, this mainstream audience never really seemed to get it, because in 2015, the Daily Mail Down Under posted a very similar article called "It's Like Goosebumps on Your Brain." And then again in 2017, the Daily Mail Outback Steakhouse edition released yet another entire article intending to explain ASMR. And yet again, in 2018, the Daily Mail Crocodile Dundee explained ASMR to its audience who really seemed to have a hard time figuring out this ASMR thing. Now, 2019 was a big year for mainstream culture recognizing ASMR, because that year at the Super Bowl, Zoe Kravitz did a beer ad using ASMR.
Together.
ASMR kind of does a lot of different things. It's really hard to pin down what makes a video ASMR and what doesn't. But there are 3 through lines I've noticed in ASMR content. The use of household items. The action being more important than the sound. The visual iconography being more important than the sound. Now, the last 2 points seem counterintuitive because I thought ASMR was all about sound. But I think that this trend comes from the influence of short-form social media, which prioritizes digestible aesthetics over the artistic prowess of a piece. I also just want to point out that KevinASMR is my favorite ASMR creator because he has created a notational system for ASMR, whether he realizes it or not. Each emoji corresponds to a specific sound that he creates. His audience then composes ASMR pieces for him to perform in the comments of his videos. Coconut, coconut, notational systems, composition, patronage. Convinced it's music yet? Just wait. It feels like an insult to try to explain to you what music is. Surely you know what music is. What people tend to disagree on is what music isn't. Which brings me to one of the most controversial music creators of all time, John Cage. John Cage is the most well-known and discussed avant-garde composer bar none. This is almost exclusively due to his infamous piece 4 minutes and 33 seconds, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Because Cage didn't begin his life as a composer. In fact, in college he studied theology. While studying at Sonoma College, he noticed that all of his classmates would spend hours in the library hunched over copies of the same book studying. He went and picked up the first book he could find whose author had a last name beginning with Z. He got the highest grade in the class. This convinced him that the institution was not being run correctly, so he left. When he dropped out of college, he began to tour Europe, where he encountered the music of contemporary composers such as Igor Stravinsky and Paul Hindemith. Cage was so inspired that he decided to study music composition. First, he studied with Henry Cowell, then Arnold Schoenberg, who was at this time based in LA. Just like me noticing my students haven't practiced their scales at all over winter break, Schoenberg quickly noticed Cage's musical limitations. Schoenberg told Cage that he had no sense of harmony. Schoenberg claimed that without a solid understanding of harmony, Cage would spend his compositional career running into a solid wall. Cage famously replied, "I will dedicate my life to banging my head against that wall." But I don't believe Cage ever truly lived up to that promise. While many tease Schoenberg for his emancipation of dissonance, Cage seemed to ignore harmony as a necessary ingredient to music altogether, even in his piano sonatas. This is no ordinary piano piece, no. Cage took random household items and shoved them in, on, under, and in between his piano strings, much to the chagrin of piano technicians worldwide. Now, the piano was no longer a harmony machine, but a sound machine. Now, the random household items are important because, as we've established, ASMR performance is based around menial objects and the mundane, boring sounds that they make. When these sounds are pushed into the limelight, we are forced to observe them as something worthy of our attention. But the prepared piano sonatas are still too rhythmic, too musical.
When will this guy get to the real ASMR?
Watches his watch as he works. He takes it seriously. I think it's interesting. If you are amused, you may laugh. If you like it, you may buy the recordings. John Cage and Water Walk.
Here is what I believe to be one of the very first pieces of ASMR, John Cage's Water Walk, performed on the panel game show I've Got a Secret. That's right, they aired this stuff on TV. Compared to our understanding of ASMR, this work might seem very noisy, but there are several elements that definitively make this ASMR. Household items. An action being more important than the sound it makes. And, of course, my favorite part, a mirror propped up on the piano so that you can see the vibrating fish, because the iconography of the item is more important than the sound itself. I also want to point out that the score is very reminiscent of KevinASMR's Emoji series. But is this music? Yes, because it has a cadence. I didn't believe it either at first, but it has a definitive point where the entire audience can tell the piece is over. So many contemporary composers have taken a page from Cage and built works, legacies, and even entire careers off of this composed ASMR. Helmut Lachenmann is most famous for two pieces, Guero, where a pianist runs their fingernails across different elements of the keyboard, and Pression, where a cellist explores the ASM art of the cello. Some of my other favorite examples of ASMR elements in contemporary classical music include Maya Miro Johnson's cover song, Bin Nobuto's Tell Me Again.
Hi, hello, welcome to the dentist. Okay, sit back, say okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Perfect, you have teeth. Okay.
Benjamin Patterson's Paper Piece. Julie Michaels' Hopscotch. And countless others. Ooh, and Alvon Lucier's I Am Sitting in a Room. Now that is a cool piece. I'm so glad I didn't forget that one. I Am Sitting in a Room is a sound art piece created by American composer... Wait, what's sound art?
Following the 20th century, the boundaries of what constitutes art have been pushed to include mediums outside of the traditional forms of painting, drawing, printmaking, photography, and sculpture. These include, but are not limited to, performance, light, text, and sound. The term sound art was first widely used in the avant-garde or experimental art scene of the late 1970s to describe works that utilize sound in ways uncharacteristic of music.
Uncharacteristic of music? Say, can you tell me what sounds are characteristic of music? If you ask Google, the annoying AI overview that ruins everything that I used to like about the internet lists the fundamental elements of music. Pitch, how high or low a sound is. Duration, how long or short a sound is. And timbre, which is too complicated to explain for this segment. Those are all essentially metrics that help us identify or describe sounds, but they don't tell us what sounds are musical or not. And this is no hate to my dear friend the Berman Museum of Art, because you and I know what they mean. Sounds like this, or this are not what we expect from music, but there really is no barrier of exclusion that keeps these sounds from being used in a musical context. Furthermore, the video goes on to discuss
Italian futurist artist Luigi Russolo,
who they describe as an
Italian futurist artist,
but as someone who just finished a degree in music, I can assure you that we discussed Luigi Russolo in a music history class. In art appreciation, we never mentioned the guy. So what is he? A composer or an artist? And more importantly, what is his work? Art or music? This is where sound art becomes a strange beast in our journey. See, I've spent this entire video educating you on ASMR and music to try and help you see the connections between their disciplines, practices, and art forms. But sound art is where things get complicated because no one seems to know what it is. Maybe context is the only divider. Music is consumed in performance venues, sound art is consumed in galleries, and ASMR is consumed in Trisha Paytas' tavern. This might make sense because sound art pieces also have a striking visual component, such as Janet Cardiff's 40-part motet. It has a musical title because a motet is a type of medieval Latin polyphonic choral song, but it's performed in an art gallery by speakers, not human musicians. So the visual of a circle of speakers plus the sound of said speakers constitute this piece as sound art. The Singing Ringing Tree is a sound art sculpture in England that also seems to have equal parts visual and sonic aesthetic appeal. But what about Alphonse Lucier's I Am Sitting in a Room? Alphonse Lucier was absolutely a musician first. He dabbled in jazz drumming in his youth. He studied graduate level music, but his work seems very strange without the proper context. This is how the piece I Am Sitting in a Room starts. And bear with me, because this is strange, but it's important. This is I Am Sitting in a Room.
I am sitting in a room. I am recording the sound of my speaking voice, and I am going to play it back into the room again and again.
The text explains the entire piece. He says his brief monologue, he records the recording he just made, then he records that recording, and then he records that recording. Over time, the resonant frequency of the room overtakes his voice, and you just hear the sound of sound. The room that you are in right now seems silent to you, but that is only because you have not listened to it. At the 32nd iteration of this re-recording process, this is the music of Alphonse Lucier. If you ever have 45 minutes to kill, I highly encourage you to listen to the entire piece. It's weirdly meditative to listen to this man's voice deteriorate and deteriorate and deteriorate until it begins blooming into something new and beautiful. It's thought-provoking, which is why I think Wikipedia has chosen to label it as sound art. It's relaxing, which gives it this ASMR quality. And it's beautiful, which I think makes it music. Now, sound has always been the medium of music, obviously, but the idea of sound being a medium for art is a modern trend. My favorite video on this topic of sound as an artistic medium is by American artist Christine Sun Kim, who is a sound artist who is deaf.
So with sound as my new art medium, I delved into the world of music. And I was surprised to see the similarities between music and ASL. For example, a musical note cannot be fully captured and expressed on paper. And the same holds true for a concept in ASL.
Now you might wonder how this works, but she explains that because she sees hearing people's reaction to sound without necessarily hearing the source, she has a closer relationship to sound than the average person. Which brings me to deaf poetry, which is a rich tradition of signed poetry. I love this poem, Caterpillar, because it's so simple that you can understand it even with no knowledge of American Sign Language. It has this very consistent musical cadence to it, as if poet Ian Sanborn was performing it to music. My only grievance with this video is that the editor muted the sound, because I and anyone who has spent any amount of time with the deaf community knows that sign language is a lot louder than you would think. The sound of your hands clapping or rubbing together, the sporadic vocalisms of deaf signers, these are the sounds of the language. But you may be asking yourself, Collin, why are you now talking about deaf poetry? What does this have to do with our question of ASMR and how it fits into music? Because deaf people, such as Christine Sun Kim, recognize the same principle that John Cage wanted the world to understand. Even if their relationship with sound is more nuanced and removed, they know even better than us that there is no such thing as silence. In 1952, John Cage composed the most divisive piece of all time. You see, he'd been on a quest for silence for a long time. He visited an anechoic chamber at Harvard University, which is this room designed to be absolutely silent. Instead of silence, he heard two sounds, a high-pitched hum and a low-pitched rumble. In the most silent environment, he heard his own nervous system and blood flow. This inspired him to write 4 minutes and 33 seconds, a piece with no notes on the page, just 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. Although we now know that there is no such thing as true silence, the music of this composition comes from the breathing of the audience, the creaking of an old concert hall, all of the environmental sounds that were already there. And therein lies the controversy of this piece. Cage didn't write or create any of the sounds of 433, so did he just plagiarize the world? There are many discussions around 433, so it's hard to say something that hasn't already been said. Some say it's genius, some say it's stupid and everything that's wrong with modern art, because all those sounds were going to happen anyway. I think it's true that every component of 433 already existed, but I think the beauty of the piece is that you weren't listening to those sounds until the piece started. Every human has some relationship with sound, and we seem to be very bad at coming up with categories that accurately separate beings, items, or concepts into nice, neat systems of organization. It's just not one of our strong suits. So, is there any difference between music and ASMR? Well, clearly, the way you consume these art forms seems to be different, and I think that everyone can identify music from ASMR, but when really pressed, we might not be able to articulate it. And even if we try, where does sound art fit into our definition? How about deaf poetry? John Cage believed that music was sound, and sound was music. At the beginning of this video, I said that yesterday I thought I'd developed tinnitus because my neighbor's car alarm went off for 8 hours. This is because I didn't engage with the sound as if it had any value or interest to it. I assumed something bad had happened to my hearing before I ever considered that it could be a beautiful or intentional sound, one that my neighbor so graciously performed as a provocative installation. So be intentional with your listening, like Cage. John Cage sometimes would stop on the New York City sidewalk, close his eyes, and listen to the sound of cars driving by, pedestrians walking around him, construction, birds, the world. And what's more musical than that? Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please click like to boost this video's reach. If you really liked it, please click subscribe to be notified for next month's video. And if you really liked it, consider supporting my channel through a donation of any amount on buymeacoffee.com. That link is listed in the description along with more incredible videos for further viewing on this subject. Thank you again.